On a deserted street in London, a female police officer was on patrol. She had no idea at all that she had fallen into the sights of a lurking killer. A dark shadow suddenly rushed forward from nowhere and fired a shot into the female officer's head. Without a warning, without a chance to resist, she collapsed onto the road. Blood spilled onto the street under the dim light, and she lost her life in an instant. The whole city remained silent as if nothing had happened. As usual, Tom couldn't sleep. He was about to drink some alcohol to make it easier to fall asleep. But when he looked out the window, he saw three punks about to steal a car right at the corner. Already annoyed from not being able to sleep, Tom grabbed a stick and went down to teach the three of them a lesson. He was a police officer always committed to justice, but had an impulsive and hot-headed personality. His style of working was action, not wasting time with idle talk. He used the stick to hit one guy's shin as a warning. One accomplice raised a knife, threatening to slash his face. Without saying a word, he punched each one, leaving all three rolling around in pain on the ground. The very next day, his action of beating the three thieves was immediately reported in the press. Since the media already had a grudge against the police, they now had even more reason to slander their reputation. The police chief, grim-faced, came to find Tom and accused him of making the police look bad. Tom said he was just defending himself. These punks even pulled out knives and were about to steal his wallet. When facing criminals, he didn't have time to worry about what the press hounds would write about him. Seeing him say that, the police chief had no more reason to punish him. He said it was best he didn't cause any more trouble before the public furor subsided. On the surface, Tom seemed like a dirty cop who enjoyed roughing people up, but in reality, he was a compassionate person who always valued his friends and colleagues. The person he respected most was Inspector Bruce. He was Tom's former boss and always understood his personality. He knew he was a good person, but just a bit hot-tempered. Today, Tom attended the funeral of Bruce's wife. Afterward, to comfort his friend, he took Inspector Bruce out for a drink to drown his sorrows. When Tom got home planning to rest, he received a notification from his colleagues asking him to report to the crime scene. A female police officer had been attacked by an unknown assailant while on duty. This was the case that happened at the beginning of the film. At this time, it was raining heavily, accidentally wiping away all traces at the scene. But luckily, Tom found a witness from the time the incident occurred. He followed his boss's order to take him for questioning. The man's name was Anthony. After telling him what he had witnessed, the young man confessed that he was a die-hard fan of Tom. Seeing his surprise, Anthony explained the reason. It turned out that last year, he had used a crowbar to beat up a guy who was going berserk attacking people in the bar, and now Tom had become a legend of that bar. After his wife's death, Inspector Bruce took a temporary leave to grieve. The police department was short-staffed, so they asked the Western Force to transfer someone over to help. The person who arrived was a young inspector named Nash, with a somewhat small, weak, and slightly effeminate appearance. This young man was scoffed at and often ridiculed by other police officers in the department. Even among the police, there were still some immature individuals who engaged in workplace bullying. Some people teased Nash by writing on the bathroom walls to insult him, but instead of getting angry, he quietly sighed. It was clear this was not the first time he had suffered ostracism from his colleagues. At the East Side Police Department, Nash was assigned to the same team as Tom to jointly investigate the recent case of the murdered female police officer. Like everyone else, he showed his dislike for the new colleague because he looked like the complete opposite of his hands-on, working with punches style. The case still had no new leads. Just as the police officers thought the investigation had hit a dead end, suddenly the media leaked a piece of news. That day, while working, Harold in the crime information department at the newspaper received a phone call. The person on the other end was none other than the killer who had murdered the ill-fated female police officer. He told him he would recount the entire incident and told Harold to take careful notes. Suddenly, the killer told him to choose a favorite number. He blurted out the number 8, which made the pervert very satisfied. He said then today he would eliminate 8 police officers. After hanging up, the killer targeted a young police officer. After a few words of conversation, this guy raised his gun. A loud bang immediately attracted the attention of passers-by, and the police also arrived. In just a few days, there were already 2 murders on the streets. Furthermore, the killer openly challenged them by targeting young police officers in his crimes. This incident quickly sent shockwaves through the police force. They mobilized their entire force to search for clues about the perpetrator. However, despite going through countless files, they couldn't identify him. It was clear this killer was very intelligent. Every time he acted, he left no trace. He knew where every camera was placed, so he usually avoided places easily recorded. He had never been clearly captured by surveillance cameras. Nash took the initiative to start a conversation with Tom during lunch. Although he knew Tom didn't welcome him at all, He said they both had to work together to get this case done. After reviewing the case file, Nash saw that the weapon was a gun discarded near the scene, so he told Tom. He quickly went to a weapons smuggler to trace information about those who had bought the gun from him, but this guy said he didn't know either. Having no other options, Tom leveraged his connections with a group of criminals specializing in trading information in the underworld. He arranged to meet Radner to ask him if he knew anything about the killer who was hunting police officers. He said he knew who the person was. However, in return, Tom had to give him money for him to talk, because Radner had never given anything away for free in his life. But this guy didn't know who he was dealing with. Tom was a brutal cop. He squeezed the guy painfully, making him cry out and beg for mercy. He confessed that he knew a crazy guy living at a gym who had recorded a video of himself torturing a police dog. He burned the dog to death and posted it on social media, saying he was preparing a massacre plan. Having a crucial lead, Tom quickly left, leaving Radner fuming behind. This trip was a complete waste of effort for the guy. He not only didn't get any money, but also had to pay for Tom's drink as well. He went to the gym and observed, careful not to tip off the target. He wasn't in a hurry to reveal he was a police officer, but only quietly investigated the suspects. Tom returned home. He called Nash to discuss the plan and new investigation direction based on the information they had both found. The two sat and drank for a while, and Tom started to feel a bit dizzy. It was then that he dared to confide in his colleague, admitting that he always felt morally constrained within this prejudiced society. He had witnessed many criminals escape punishment thanks to connections and money, but couldn't do anything about them. This made Tom increasingly violent, always wanting to give criminals a beating. Because of this, he was always criticized by his superiors for his hot temper and aggression. Nash completely understood his feelings because he had been in a similar situation himself. At that time, the West Side Police Department had also detained a killer, although they knew for sure this guy was the perpetrator. But because there wasn't enough evidence, he was released. Due to his extreme dissatisfaction, Nash used a baseball bat and beat the guy to death on the spot. He thought he would be fired, but instead, they transferred him to the East Side Police Department where he got to work with Tom. After hearing the story, he couldn't have imagined Nash wasn't a weak person like he thought. The two seemed to find many common points in their thinking, so Tom gradually lost his aversion to Nash. Having relieved the burden on his mind, Tom had a full night's sleep. In the morning, the two followed the statements of people living near the gym and learned of a suspect named Barry. He was a mentally disturbed guy, but very intelligent. Nash knocked for a while, then Barry came out to greet them. They presented a search warrant and went inside to search. Nash found a suspicious jar, and Barry cheerfully introduced it. The jar contained the chain of a famous pop superstar that he had worked hard to win at auction. They questioned why he tortured animals, but this guy said he was just joking and that he also loved animals very much. Nash then challenged, "What about the police? Do you love them? Or why did you dare burn a police dog?" The pervert said he prayed to God every day that the police would always be healthy and do well to protect justice for society. Through Barry's way of speaking, Tom remembered who this guy was. This crazy guy was none other than the one who had been aggressive at the bar and whom he had beaten up badly. It seemed that Tom hadn't made Barry any less perverted. However, today, they didn't find anything suspicious at all in Barry's house. But based on the details and his grudge against the police, Tom and Nash both confirmed that this guy was highly likely to be the culprit. Firstly, he hated the police very much because Tom had beaten him up before. They determined Barry would be the prime suspect, and the whole team would focus on monitoring him. As the two left, Barry dropped his mocking expression. He muttered crazily that the best part was yet to come. He quickly packed his things to go out. Meanwhile, Radner was downstairs following Barry because he also suspected Barry wasn't simple. Moreover, this guy also wanted to gather a few clues to sell the information for money. Waiting for Barry to leave, the opportunity arrived. Radner then sneaked inside and found a parking payment receipt from an apartment building. As for Barry, he drove to a parking lot and hid everything in the trunk. Then he left the car there and cycled away. He stood and watched Inspector Bruce because this guy had been targeting him for a long time. Barry saw that he lived alone due to his wife's death and often bought alcohol at the supermarket, so he chose Bruce as his next victim. He sneaked and followed Bruce into the house. Then he didn't forget to destroy the surveillance camera before acting. After that, he watched the elevator stop at the 16th floor, so he went in to go up. Barry knocked and disguised himself as an internet bill collector. Suddenly, Barry pulled out a gun and held Bruce captive. He tried to wrestle with the killer, but due to his old age, he couldn't fight back. Bruce was beaten by him until he was dead. After eliminating the police officer, Barry was not only not afraid. He calmly watched TV and washed himself thoroughly to stage the crime scene and erase all traces. This guy poured alcohol on all the furniture and burned down the house. Then he leisurely left. Outside the building, the fire department was already present, but no one suspected Barry at all. He became even more smug and called reporter Harold to recount his entire killing process and announced that the victim was Inspector Bruce. Barry claimed he had a guerrilla-style attack, meaning he acted suddenly and quickly, leaving no traces. He gave himself the nickname Beltiz and asked the reporter to write about his criminal acts and to use the name Baltus when referring to him. Immediately, the media exploded with news about a serial killer specializing in targeting police officers. Nash was very angry when he read the news and found Tom to discuss the matter. They knew that Harold was the killer's link to the media. Every time he carried out a murder, he would contact the reporter to report on himself using language aimed at discrediting the police. On Radnor's side, after waiting hidden until Barry put his things in the trunk and left, this guy stealthily opened the car door. The guy was very skilled at stealing things from others, so he easily opened the killer's trunk. He saw a gun and a police hat and guessed with certainty that Barry was the serial killer. Holding important information, he planned to sell the news to Tom. But due to the unsuccessful experience last time when Tom stiffed him on the money, this guy decided to sell the information to the press. Without further thought, Radnor called Harold, saying he knew the killer's identity, but the price was 50,000 British pounds. By this time, Harold had been promoted at the newspaper thanks to the sensational scoops about the police attacks he had reported. To get to a higher position, Harold thought this amount was worth investing. Seeing the other side agreed, Radnor informed Harold of the location he needed to come to. The two found a lot of evidence in the trunk and were sure they were about to become heroes for solving the case and reporting it. But in a corner, Barry was already waiting. He had seen everything, watching the two guys searching his car. Barry smiled a dangerous smile. The two arranged to meet at a pub to make the exchange. Harold gave the guy an envelope of money and told him to reveal the name of the perverted killer. But Radnor said he would go check if the money was enough and then come back. After earning a considerable amount of money, Radnor gleefully counted the money in the bathroom, smiling from ear to ear. But when he saw Barry walk in, his smile vanished. Radnor quickly told him that he hadn't revealed Barry's name to the reporter yet. But how could a bloodthirsty guy like him spare this one? To prevent Radnor from continuing to blab and reveal his identity, Barry dragged this guy into the bathroom and then drowned him. As for himself, he took the money and left, then returned to destroy all evidence in the car trunk. When the guy didn't come back for a long time, Harold went into the bathroom to look and found Radnor dead. Police cars arrived at the crime scene. Tom and Nash sat down to question the reporter. You should know, this lying, sensationalist journalist specialized in spreading bad news about the police department, so Tom absolutely hated him. The very news about him beating the three thieves had been twisted by this guy into a report of a police officer abusing his authority to beat innocent people. Harold recounted that Radnor said he knew who the killer was, so he just came to get the news. After some threatening, Harold also gave them a few clues about the car. He said that the car trunk contained a lot of the killer's incriminating evidence. The two followed the reporter's words to the parking garage and found Barry's car. But they didn't know that this cunning guy had already moved all the evidence elsewhere. Tom saw a security camera opposite, so he asked the building security to show him the recorded footage. Coincidentally, the machine's capacity was full, so they had reset it yesterday. All data from the past 6 months was lost. The trip yielded no new clues, leaving Tom and Nash stuck. The two sat and drew up a case profile. The common point for all three victims was that they were police officers, and all evidence seemed to have been destroyed, except for a piece of clothing with the name of a gym on it. At this point, Tom had to resort to the help of a female colleague to find information about Barry. Barry's criminal record showed him to be a thug who had been arrested multiple times. This guy's number of offenses was even more than the hair on Tom's head. After compiling the information, they discovered that the murdered police officers all had their names on the list of those who had participated in missions to arrest Barry in the past. First was female officer Sandra, then the young officer, the third was Bruce. When scrolling down further, Tom recognized Elizabeth's name on the list. She was the trainee police sergeant Tom was responsible for mentoring. At this point, there was no longer any doubt. Barry was the culprit, and this guy's next target was Elizabeth. Meanwhile, she was out on a date with her boyfriend in a bar. The two talked happily, but didn't notice Barry's eyes following their every move. A while later, her boyfriend drove her home. However, the two had an argument, so Elizabeth went into the house first. While she was opening the door to go inside, Elizabeth received a call from Tom, but accidentally dropped her phone. She bent down to pick it up, luckily escaping Barry's attack. He was dressed, and his face was completely covered. Just as Elizabeth was about to be in danger, someone ran up and pulled the killer away. But unfortunately, the young man was no match for Barry, so he was thrown onto the ground and his neck was broken by a kick. Elizabeth went to check and discovered it was her kind young neighbor. She screamed for help, but it was too late. Later, the police arrived to examine the crime scene. Nash and Tom were, of course, also present. They came to comfort Elizabeth, and she told them that he and Elizabeth had been friends since childhood. The two were very fond of each other, and once the young man had even reminded Elizabeth about a killer when the two were in the kitchen. Elizabeth's boyfriend returned because he received news that there were police outside Elizabeth's house. But the boyfriend was ripped into by Tom and Nash for letting his girlfriend go home alone. She had been almost killed but was saved by a young man, and unfortunately, he was killed by the other guy. Another innocent person was gone, making the two officers very angry. The two then went to find that scumbag's house, but he had already slipped away. The two went inside to look for evidence, but this cunning guy had quickly cleaned everything up. As for himself, he took the £50,000 and went to enjoy life at a luxurious hotel. Recognizing the danger of letting this serial killer escape into the community, the police department issued an arrest warrant for Barry. The news broadcast on TV made a taxi driver recognize Barry because this guy had taken his taxi to a hotel the previous night. After seeing the news being broadcast, the taxi driver called the police and pointed out where Barry was. The police department dispatched Tom, leading a SWAT team equipped with firearms and bulletproof vests, to cordon off the hotel. When they broke down the door and stormed in, Barry had already climbed down the window to escape. Immediately, Tom jumped down to chase after this guy. Barry ran through many streets, but was still hotly pursued by Tom from behind. This guy was hit by a car, but he still got up and ran away very quickly. Unable to shake him off, this guy had to jump down from the bridge to run onto the highway. The two, one running, one chasing, weaved through the one-way highway. By this time, Nash had received the information and was in a police car tracking the two. He said they had to find Barry no matter what, because if that guy was caught by Tom, he would definitely be beaten to a pulp. Meanwhile, Barry ran into a train station to escape Tom. He hid under a train carriage. Thinking he had escaped, Barry was about to crawl out to continue hiding. Bad luck for this guy. Tom had been waiting for a long time. He coldly approached the killer. Tom's eyes were full of fiery anger. He wished he could tear Barry apart. But this guy wasn't afraid because he knew the police force was approaching and Tom wouldn't be able to kill him. Because if he hit Barry, it would be in the papers and the police image would be tarnished. Nash stepped in to stop him and cool his temper. After being arrested, the police still couldn't do anything to Barry. Because according to the police chief, they didn't have enough evidence to charge him. Barry was a pervert, but possessed abundant cunning intelligence. He requested to see his private lawyer and also knew he would be released within 48 hours if the police couldn't find evidence. He admitted the car was his, but said it had been parked there for half a year and argued that anyone could have stolen his car and used it to commit crimes. Barry was the one who had tampered with the camera in the basement, so he knew Tom and Nash wouldn't be able to find evidence. The two angrily left, knowing this guy was about to walk free just like the criminals before him. But then Nash told Tom that they should set a trap for this psycho together. The next day, Tom went to the temporary detention room to meet Barry alone. He stood in front of him and insulted this guy as a cowardly pervert. He had beaten him like a rag doll at the bar, which caused this guy to develop a twisted hatred for the police. But Tom taunted that Barry was scared of him and didn't dare seek revenge directly, only targeting women, young people, and old men for revenge. Stung by his words, Barry looked at Tom, fuming with resentment, and was determined to seek revenge. Seeing this guy had taken the bait, he left satisfied. After 2 days in temporary detention at the police station, Barry was released. The media hounded the guy like a celebrity. Of course, Barry loved the feeling of being recognized by others. Tom and Nash continued with their plan, knowing Barry wouldn't be able to stay put. During Inspector Bruce's funeral, he took a uniform he had stolen beforehand and disguised himself as a young police officer. Then he watched Tom from a distance, waiting for him to leave. Barry quickly followed him closely. Thinking of the scene of Tom dying in front of him, his ego was satisfied, and this guy broke into a grotesque smile. After that, Tom got into the car and left. Barry also chased after him. Tom drove to a parking garage and went up to the rooftop. Barry pulled out a gun from his person and prepared to take revenge. He pointed the gun at Tom and cursed. But surprisingly, the person who turned around was Nash in disguise. From behind, Tom repeatedly hit this guy's head with an iron bar. After many days of enduring, Tom lashed out and beat this scumbag to vent his anger until he was spitting blood. Barry still didn't regret the evil he had done. He said, "What about the police? They couldn't do anything to him in the end. Wait until I get down there. I'll report you both and you'll go to jail." But Nash was not a saintly police officer like Barry thought. He pulled out a handgun, which was the very weapon Barry used to kill people, and gave it to Tom. Barry said the police couldn't harm him, but Tom said, "What police officer is harming you? Look at what you're wearing." If he killed him, the investigating police would likely just assume the serial pervert had continued killing police officers. He took a bullet from Tom and collapsed. Finally, Barry was finished off in the exact manner he had used. The case ended without the culprit being found, but only Tom and Nash knew that the evildoer had been punished. But another unscrupulous person, Harold, had not yet been punished. Waiting until the reporter left the building, he borrowed 2 dogs from Anthony and let them loose to teach Harold a lesson. The movie ends here. What do you think about the movie? Please leave a comment below the video. Goodbye and see you in the latest video.